Okay, so in that last video, we talked about how to do a proper test spot. We talked about different types of polishers and pads. And in this next video, what we're gonna do is actually, now that we're ready to detail the car, I'm gonna explain where to start and then the path of travel to follow to actually get the whole thing done. We're also gonna cover things like taping off plastic trim. A lot of new cars have plastic trim. If you hit it, you could stain it, so it's faster to tape it off. We're also gonna go over how to deal with intricate panels and curved panels, like concave panels, how to maintain pad rotation. Then we're going to talk about simple things at the end of the day when you're all done, and that's like how to clean your pads. So next time you want to detail the car, you'll be ready to go. Enough said, let's jump into it. So a lot of cars have this pebble texture plastic on the lower portions of the car, like this front air dam. Now, when I put this tape on, you can see I kind of went onto the paint just like a 32nd of an inch. To be honest, I just don't care about that. You know, what I want to do is I don't want to stain this, and I'm willing to sacrifice even just a little bit of paint. If you want to get it perfect, but I usually don't get too bent out of shape, because at the end of the day, most people are going to come and go, wow, the car looks amazing. They go, you know, it looks really good, but you know, Mike, right here, I still see a couple swirls on that tip there. So don't be that guy. Now, the thing I wanted to share about this is, instead of taping this off and trying to hug it next to the body line, a lot of times this will actually fit in between that piece of plastic trim and the body panel. So attach it, press it down, and 100% guaranteed for sure all that plastic is taped off, protected, and covered up. Anyway, so I'm just going to keep moving around the car. When I get the lower panels done, I'm going to come up and show you a technique on how to actually pull and apply tape. So stay tuned. So after you've dialed in your test spot, you know, I showed a lot of different things up here, but technically after you dialed in your test spot, that's when you would tape off your car. I shared this. I've come across maybe 2 or 3 cars in my life that no amount of polishing was going to fix. So it wouldn't make any sense to tape off the plastic if you're not going to do the car, but you don't find that out to the test spot. As you can see, I've already taped off the pebble texture trim under the front air dam there. Shared a little technique with that, and across the sides of the car here. And this is really common on cars. It's called pebble textured black plastic trim. And there's a bunch of cladding up here in front of the wiper arms. And I'm going to show you a technique using a beach towel to cover up not only the cladding, but also the wiper arms. Because the last thing you want to do at the end of the day is throw splatter on here and have to come back, what, with the toothbrush and clean it off here? And it happens. Been there, done that. But first, let me talk about tape. There's a lot of different types of tape on the market, and I got 3 different styles here. This is just your basic Scotch blue masking tape. This is primarily sold at places like Lowe's, Home Depot. Even I get this off of Amazon because I buy big packages of it. This has really good adhesion. So it's really good for things like the pebble textured in the door areas, but sometimes you might have really sensitive areas that you just do not want to put something really sticky onto it. Like say you're taping off, say you've got a hood that's matte in the middle, but there's glossy paint next to it, and you don't want to run your polisher into that matte paint, you'll make it shiny. So you want a low tack tape. So just to help you out here, this is some Scotch. It's called Surface Delicate Surface, and it's very, very low adhesive strength, and so it's not very tacky. So if I had to tape off something really sensitive and I was worried about pulling whatever that is I'm taping off when I pull the tape off, that's when I'm going to use a low tack or a low adhesive tape. And there's another technique called burning tape. I'm probably the only guy in the world with an article. You can type into Google burning tape and add Mike Phillips. You'd probably pull it right up. But burning tape just means if you got a cotton t-shirt or cotton pants, you put the tape on there, you pull it off, and it kind of pulls some lint off, and it takes the tackiness down a couple levels. So now it's even less likely to stick to whatever it is you're trying to protect. So that's called the Delicate Surface Tape. It's purple. I only know of the one size they make here. By the way, sometimes if I need some thin, I just take a pair of scissors, or I put this on something straight like the top here and take a razor blade, run it down it, and I make my own thin tape. I don't let the fact that a manufacturer doesn't make it keep me from making my own. So there's sensitive surface. This is frog tape. Again, Lowe's, Home Depot, Amazon, and this is another low tack tape. So you can put it on something that's sensitive, with the idea being when you go to pull it off, you don't pull the paint off or whatever it is that you're trying to protect, like pinstriping or something like that. So we got the normal masking, we got the frog tape, we got the delicate surface tape. This is some more 3M tape that I like to have around just because I can get it in very thin. That's 1/4 inch. There's 3/8 of an inch. There's an inch, and there's 1/2 inch. So it's just nice to have a variety of tape. This is some more stuff you can source online. I will teach, as we kind of pan over here, I want to show the difference. With new cars, they got plastic trim. On old cars, they got chrome and stainless steel and actually nickel and aluminum trim. So there's different types of metal. All of it oxidizes. And so what I teach in my class when I practice is whatever I'm using for the paint, for the polishing step, I just go ahead when I'm done with that pad and kind of run it over the trim. It shines it up. You'll see your pad turn gray. That's a sign that it was oxidized. Even though this looks shiny, you pull gray stuff off, that's oxidation. But another thing I just want to share is this is what's called a fresh air grill. So a lot of your classic cars have a fresh air grill, and this is where they pull air in to cool the car down or to feed the air, just for cool air coming in. Air conditioning be somewhere else. But one of the things I always do is when I work on a classic cars, I look down here to see if there's any splatter dots from someone that compounded or sanded and threw slurry into here. Because if it is there, I'm not going to add any more to it. If it's not, if there is no splatter, then I'm definitely going to be taping this off, because I just don't want to be the guy that puts all this, like this has little white dots everywhere. So whoever did the original wet sand or whoever did the original cut and buff, they didn't tape it off. But the thing I just want to share is when you're working on this, if you don't have any kind of background in the body shop world, it's really easy to sand and primer and get this ready to paint. This right here, what, you're going to spend the same amount of time doing each one of these ribs. So usually this type of stuff kind of just gets done quickly. And what that means to you is if you put a high tack tape on here and you pull it off, you're pulling the paint off. So that's when you can use a low tack tape on a classic car. New cars, a lot of cars have matte finishes, delicate surfaces. Use the low tack stuff. Okay, now as far as technique goes, I'll show you the bath towel technique in a second, but up here we've got right here, this is a good example of pebble textured plastic trim. This has a smooth surface, this is pebble textured, this is pebble textured. The whole bottom of this is pebble textured. So I don't want to cream this out with compound or polish, so I want to tape that off. This rubber gasket here is smooth, but it's old and aged, so I still want to tape it off, and it's actually deteriorating back here, so there's not a whole lot you can do besides replace it. So let's just take some, this is I think a 1/2 inch Scotch blue masking tape, and sometimes I may want to, if the mirrors fold in, I may want to fold them in to make it easier to get this portion right here. So I want to be able to tape this in a way that if I fold it, I don't take my tape off. And a lot of times there's enough of a gap there that after you tape it, you can still move this around without pulling the tape off. So there's a little technique tip for you there. And a lot of times these mirrors, and every car is different, the bottom side will be glossy, so you want to polish that. But in this case, it's just matte or a pebble textured rubber, so it's ugly, and I don't want to cream it out and turn it white. I'm not sure if I shared this story already, but I'll tell you real quickly. One of my favorite quotes in life goes like this: try to learn from other people's mistakes. You may not live long enough to make them on your own. So here's a chance for you to learn from my mistake. Back when I worked at Auto Geek, one of the managers there had a Ford Escape. And I needed a car with oxidation, swirls, and scratches to show how to buff it out, but also show a ceramic coating on it. And all along the bottom of the edge was this pebble textured plastic. And I kind of thought, I'm so good, I don't need to tape that off. Yeah, that was a mistake. It didn't look bad the night I did the work. I came back the next day, so the polish or the compound, whatever I was using, had a chance to dry and turn white. And as standing back a ways, I could see all the places I accidentally went down into that trim with my polisher and creamed over it. And then I spent an hour with a degreaser and a wax and grease remover, anything I could with brushes to try to get it off. And then I put some dressing over it so he wouldn't see it and be mad. So that's why I tape everything off. You don't have to, but I do. Okay, so let me see. Sometimes when I want to do the door trim, it's actually faster and easier to go ahead and open this up and then run this all the way down instead of trying to fight with the windshield. And here's a technique tip. I actually learned this from Chip Foose. Most people, when they tape off, if they don't know what to do, they do something that looks like this. And it's a natural thing. I mean, I started out doing this too. So you grab your tape and you pull some out and you're holding it like this. That's wrong. Don't do that. What you want to do is hold this out. Now you can steer it, because I'm going to have to go around this curve here. It's hard to steer when it's just right there. The tape you got off is next to the roll itself. So you want to pull it out so you can steer it like this. Then you want to find a great attachment place and do a really good job. Like, it ain't sticking to that rubber there at all. Do a really good job to first attach it so you can pull against it. And then just take your finger, and I use my fingernails, and just start running this around all that trim. And if you get a little bit onto the paint, to me that's okay. I'd rather miss a few tiny miniature swirls next to a 16th or a 32nd little section of trim than I would to stain the tape. But you can get as nuts as you want to about it. But see how I'm pulling this out as I go and then pressing this down to make these corners. And that little tip there will help you the rest of your life taping off cars. Okay, and then because I may open the car door again, I want to go ahead and stop it here as far as the edges go, at least on the sides there. Okay, so let's pick up right there. And a couple of months ago, I actually shot a video. It's on my Instagram page. I polished out I think it was a 2020 or 2021. It was a Dodge Challenger. It was a blackout edition. It was also the drag pack. So it was set up for racing quarter mile from the factory, radio delete, all that good stuff. And it had a ton of pebble texture plastic on it. Anyway, the video I shot was just, it was really kind of just one of my dumb little videos, but I just said, here's my favorite part of the detail job. And it basically just showed me pulling the tape off, which means I'm done. I did the whole thing, I'm done. I got to pull the tape off. And I tell you, over the decades, I have met a lot of guys that'll say, you don't need to tape off. Hey, you don't want to tape off, you don't tape off, I'm taping off. Because I know myself when I work really hard on these cars. A lot of times I don't take a break. I just go till I'm done. And the last thing I want to do is come back and try to get wax out of the cracks, as I like to say, with the toothbrush. So, figure it out on your own. But for me, in my time, I like to tape off. And also, when you're taping this off, in our classes here, I teach two kinds of glass polishing. I teach there's two kinds of glass polishing. There's what's called topical glass polishing, and then there's subsurface glass polishing. So topical glass polishing is when you polish the glass just to remove like water spots or what I call drizzle stains. If you've been working on cars at all as a do-it-yourselfer or as a professional, maybe you've noticed sometimes when you've went to wipe some exterior glass, as you wipe it with that, you put some glass cleaner, take a towel and wipe it. For a brief moment, when that film of glass cleaner is just about to evaporate, you see these lines that run vertical. Those are called drizzle stains. The water drizzles down it. And over time, that water just finds a pattern that keeps repeating. And then it usually leaves mineral deposits behind. And now you've got drizzle stains that are on the glass. They're not going to wash off and they're not going to wipe off. So the only way to do it, to get them off, is to polish them off. Then let's see, when I close this, there's a rubber gasket here. And as you can see, it kind of sticks out there. Now, this is a different type of material than the gasket here and the plastic up here. It's very spongy. And again, this car is 2012, this is going on 8 years old. So that means this is weathered, which means it's more opened up. It'll more readily get creamed over with polish. So I do want to go ahead and tape this off first, come back later on and try to detail it with the toothbrush. And as a part of this detail, I will be doing topical glass polishing. So let me get back onto that topic. Topical glass polishing is when you polish just the surface to remove things like drizzle stains and water spots or traffic film. And subsurface glass polishing is when you actually use a glass polish designed to actually level glass and pull things like wiper marks out. In this last class I taught, I told any of the students if they wanted to come a day early, because the classes I teach here are so intense. There's really barely enough time to do. I mean, we did 8 cars in 2 days. Imagine that, 8 cars in 2 days. So there's a lot of times I can't cover every topic in the world thoroughly in a class setting. So what I did is I set a couple cars up to do subsurface glass polishing and told any of the students, if you want to come by the day before the class, I will show you how to do subsurface glass polishing. And I had a 1979 Corvette with wiper scratches and a 1969 Dodge Dart with wiper scratches, and basically just let the students have at it. And even though, you know, it was their first time, they did a pretty good job. Got most of the scratches out. The only thing left was the deeper stuff, and that's kind of normal. The only way to get the real deeper stuff out is the machine sand with the rotary polisher, which is actually grinding, and most people shouldn't be doing that. I've done a lot of it in my life, and I always get nervous when I do it. Okay, at this point here, I've got all this taped off. There's nothing around the door handle. There is this 5.0 sticker down here, and it looks like it's pretty much on its last leg. If I was the owner of this car, I would go ahead and just order some replacements to take those off. But because I don't know that, as a professional, I'm going to go ahead and tape it off, you know. Now that I've kind of got the edges done, I can go ahead and go back to my fat tape. You got fat tape, skinny tape, get my fat tape out here and just cover up all this stupid black plastic trim. Back to like, hey Mike, I noticed you like to work on old cars. Yeah, it's kind of do because the classic body lines look cool, but also they just don't have any stupid black plastic trim. And I always tell people, the guy that invented pebble texture trim, it's just my guess, he's probably never detailed a car. If he did, he would not have made that stuff. Okay. And sometimes when you're doing a curve, it helps to like just put a little tear in one side of it so it can kind of curve around. I did that just now for that because there was a high point in there. And of course, when you are doing this, be careful so you don't run your polisher over the plastic trim, but if you do, at least it's protected. Okay, so something like that. Then the only way for me to get that is to come back around here with a mini tool. So I can do that, but just for fun, I'll go ahead and put a little tape over here just to be thorough. Someone decided it was a good idea to put a lot of plastic trim around this mirror. Then there's also this top component here, this top trim piece that separates glossy paint from this. And think about it, if you're doing this on your own car for money and you cream this over, every time on the driver's side they get in, they're gonna see that. So take a few moments and tape off all the pebble texture black plastic trim. There, just like that. And this thing's actually pretty oxidized. Okay, that's how I would tackle the trim real quickly. And just to note, I do a lot of Corvettes too. The modern C8s and even the C6s right here and right up here, they got a little thin strip of pebble texture plastic. Tape that off, don't cream over it. Corvettes look cool. They don't need someone like us making them look uncool. Okay, so something like this, I would just kind of bring this down here, attach it really well, bring it around, and then I'll just take and fold the tape into itself. Like that. And then I messed that up, but there we go. That's how I would tape that off. Let me show you this, and then I'll show you wheel maskers. Okay, up here around the windshield wiper arms, we have plastic cladding, and we have the wiper arms themselves. This thing needs an engine detail. So let me show you how I do this. Normally, I like to use a beach towel, okay? Because the beach towel is usually a little bit longer in its length, so it'll fit all the way. I don't have one down here today. I used to have one with the Jolly Rogers on it that I put in all the cars I detailed, and somehow I left that on a car somewhere. But take and run your towel through, and then what you want to do is pull this out so it's out of the way. And then you want to just take this side and fold it under the wiper blades themselves. Okay. And then in one fell swoop, as the saying goes, you've just covered up the majority of the cladding and the wiper arms themselves. And again, because I do topical glass polishing, I'm going to throw splatter that way, and it would hit the front side of those wiper arms and wiper blades, and these are dried out just like the trim, so cleaning them with the toothbrush would take a while, so you don't want to do that. Then come up here, and this is important. You shouldn't start the engine until you remove the towel, but you just want to make sure it's not interfering with any moving parts and with the hinges, okay? Nothing's blocking the hinge. And once you're happy with that, then go ahead and put the hood down. And while I have this open, here is a technique. By letting this sit up, when you talk about not buffing on an edge, or you could even do something like this, shove a microfiber towel or roll of tape or something in here. Okay, and what this does is it holds it up away from these panels, so then you can buff out this panel without any fear of being hit in this edge. Same thing over here. I can easily buff this edge without worrying about hitting this edge. So there's another little technique tip for you. Same thing with the doors. Open the door, polish the edge, leave the door open, polish the side of the body. And that's just a technique you can use. Open panels up to make it safer to buff them. Okay, so then when I'm done, I want to come up here, and this is important because a lot of cars have this, but right here, the top of this fender, there's a piece of very dried out, aged rubber. And if you do not tape this off, you will stain it, and then you will be cleaning it. So go ahead and put a little tape right in there to protect it. And because this is not a beach towel, I have a little bit of cladding over here I do want to take and cover up, so I don't have to worry about digging splatter stains out of it later. Get down there and stick. Okay. And then towards the end of the video, just to kind of complete this job, I'll show you how to fix that black plastic trim to make it look good again, and explain some of the things that most people just don't ever think about or understand when it comes to restoring black plastic trim. I actually taught a class on restoring black plastic trim at Mobile Tech one year. I didn't want to. I was asked to, and I didn't want to because it's a boring topic, and it's probably one of the few classes I've taught at Mobile Tech that just wasn't actually standing room only. But I did cover it. But the thing I shared in there was what most people do is they buy a new car, the plastic looks good, they don't do anything. They don't do anything for years. Then one day they look at it and it's all faded. Then they look for a miracle product that'll fix it, like one and done, set it and forget it. And that just ain't gonna happen. What's better is to be proactive, and before it starts to fade, start treating it and stay on top of it. Okay, we've got this done, and then I wanna show something I've been showing for about 20 years now. You wouldn't know about this unless you had a body shop background, but this is called a wheel masker. And you can get this at a PBE store. PBE store is a local auto parts store that sells paint and solvents to local body shops. PBE, paint, body and equipment, so a PBE store. Or I got these off of Amazon. They come in different sizes, but it's called a wheel masker. Now, I used to show this all the time with the cars I detailed in the classes I taught at AutoGeek for the last 15 years. So I've been showing this for a long time. Nowadays, I see a whole lot of companies got these out there with their name on them. So yeah, wherever you want to get them, whatever name you want on there. But if you just want these simple canvas ones, you can go to Amazon, and they're pretty cheap. And here's the point. I wash this thing Monday morning, and part of that was getting these wheels clean, caked on brake dust. I machine scrubbed the tires to get the old browning and tire dressing off, and now they're ready to put a dressing on, but I don't want to throw splatter on anything when I'm down here buffing. So, you know, wheel masker just helps you to protect it, save time. But another thing, I always teach people to get the car completely taped off, and now's when you take your picture, because what you want to do is you want to show the car real ugly, show it ugly. Then when you're done, you pull all this off and show it real beautiful. Okay, so the idea is to make it ugly on purpose. Do everything you can to make it ugly, get your shot, then finish it all out, and then take the after shot. It has more of a dramatic impact or dramatic effect. So that's why I do that. Always preserve the ugly. Okay, so we've got all that done, and the next thing we're going to do, if you remember what I said in the video, after you dial your test spot in on a panel you can look down on, that's when you go to the top, work your way down. So I'm going to work my way over to that side, and here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to buff out this side to show process, and then I'm going to buff out the vertical panels. And the key about the vertical panels is just pick an end. It doesn't matter which one. Pick this end or that end and start at one end and go the entire direction. So let me go ahead and get ramped up, and I'll show you how to, and I'm just going to keep using that same entry-level polisher I showed before. In the real world, I wouldn't use it, but I know a lot of you are just getting into polishing. I do have the force rotation hooked up. I got the force rotation hooked up, so in case I get into a thin panel where this just is not maintaining pad rotation, I can switch over. I've also got my micro tools set up and ready to go. Before I start polishing, we were using this pad when we did the test spot, and I've got a bunch of product that is actually kind of dried onto the pad. So I want to just show you how to do what's called clean your pad on the fly. There's a couple ways to do this. Here's the first way. First of all, if you look at this brush, I've got another one around here. It's got a tan handle with black bristles. I recommend always looking for the one with the white bristles. Here's why. This is technically a tire scrubbing brush. If you've got black bristles and you scrub a black tire wall and you pull that black stuff off the old tire dressing, the tire browning, and it stains the bristles, because it's black, you can't see it. Then if you take and try to do anything else, that you risk staining that thing as it comes off the bristles. If you've got a brush with white bristles and you look at it and you see a stain, you'll be smart enough not to go do anything stupid like rub carpet with it, because you'll stain it with the black stuff. So I like the white brush. But here's what I would do with this. First of all, you see my hand here? I'm going to come back here. I'm going to put that against the backing plate to keep this thing from spinning. I'm going to put this against my leg, and you could use a toothbrush, but this big fat brush works better. Then I'm just going to scrub off any excess. Take and spin it. Scrub off any excess. You don't got to get it perfect. You just want to get the excess. And you got to remember, there's two things that build up on the face of your pad when you're buffing out a car, just like that. It doesn't really work to, oh, I got to plug this in. It doesn't really work to turn it in and hold this, because just this brush will keep this thing from rotating, so it doesn't work. So just block it with your hand and clean it. I do the same thing with the gear-driven version. I don't got to block it up, but I just take and clean it. And I do the initial cleaning by just like that, and then I will turn this one on and just kind of hold that on there and get as much stuff as I can. The other way to do this would be to take a terry cloth towel. This is kind of small, but this is called Clean Your Pad and Fly, and you would basically just take and you would hold this against there and turn it on and press this into it. And what that'll do is it'll take off this excess material here, and it also pulls some of the liquid out. Okay, so terry cloth works good for that. Usually a hand towel, not a wash rag like this, but that's how I do that. And I'll show you that as we get working on the car. And this, always remember, anytime you're doing paint correction, you have two things that build up on the face of your pads, and that's spent product. Okay, so the product you put on is used up, but there's a residue. Spent product, removed paint. You know, when you do paint correction, you're not filling the swirls and scratches in. So the way you visually make them disappear is you level the surface and you try to bring the tops of the surface down to the lowest depth of the defects you're trying to remove. And that's how they visually disappear, whether they're water spots, holograms, swirls, scratches, oxidation. Anyway, so you want to keep that clean off your pads. And then let me just kind of touch on how many pads does it take to buff out a car? Because this video is kind of focused on foam pads, not microfiber, not wool pads on rotaries. When it comes to foam pads, Part of the cut, as I explained before, comes from the cut of the pad and the cut of the product. When foam gets wet, it gets soft. So as you're working on the car, as you see the pad actually start to become wet with whatever compound or polish you're using, it's probably time to switch over to a fresh, clean, dry pad. And a couple things about that. A dry pad, as compared to a wet pad, will rotate and oscillate better. So you'll get better and faster correction ability by switching to a dry pad often. You'll increase the effectiveness of the paint correction process because now you're using a foam that's actually cutting because it's dry or only lightly wet. Once it gets to the point of pad saturation or it's soggy, you basically are buffing out with a finishing pad, a foam finishing pad. So, and that's why I'm not a big fan of using pad cleaners as I work around the car. I use pad cleaners at the end of the day. Clean my pads, let them air dry so they're dry, so they'll rotate good and oscillate good. They'll have the cut restored, then go back and use them tomorrow. And actually, I go through so many pads in this shop for my classes or just detailing cars. I've got an old school washing machine. It's old school. It's got an agitator that goes nuts. And I just showed it to the classes last week, and we threw absolutely dirty pads in there, come out looking brand new. So I clean most of mine, but I will show you how to use a pad washer. Okay, I need to grab some extension cords and get plugged in, and then I will show you how to tackle the roof. Okay, so if you look back here, I got a lot of extension cords. This because I got a lot of tools. And usually I run my classes. In the old days, I used to run up to 20 people. I know the experts on social media will say, well, that's too many people. You won't get any one-on-one time with the instructor. But that's not true in my class. I walk around the whole time and watch everybody, interact with them, and help tweak their technique or let them know they're doing it perfect. I don't just sit down in a chair when the class is going on. And when I have bigger classes, I just bring in more cars. And because of that, I need a lot of tools and I need a lot of extension cords. And here's the thing about the extension cords. This is a 12 gauge. That means the wire inside here is very thick. It can flow a lot of amperage through it quickly to power up the tool. If you're using like an extension cord like you would use, here's what I do, let's throw this out. If you're using an extension cord like you might use to run Christmas lights at 16 gauge, then chances are really good you're going to starve that tool for power, and eventually it'll burn up some of the components in the electrical system of that tool. So don't skimp out. I just purchased some of these for the class this last weekend at Home Depot, the Husky. This is the Husky brand, 12 gauge, 25 footers. We're just under 40 bucks with tax. So if you're going to buy nice tools, use good extension cords. There's one, the other one's done. Okay, so we are good. Okay, let me just show you how to clean your pad on fly. This pad isn't wet, so I'll try to show it to you later on. But this is how I would do it. I would just take this, turn this on, and I'm pushing that in and pressing it. Anyway, that's how I would clean a pad with cotton towel called Clean Your Pad on the Fly, or I'd use the brush. And then I said earlier, if I'm cleaning the Beast or the copy of the Beast, I would start by just hand brushing like this. But at some point I'd go ahead and turn it on because this is going to spin that way. I hold it over here, run it down the center. Just make sure you've kicked off any spent product or removed paint so you're buffing clean. Okay, in keeping with using an entry-level tool, we dialed in the heavy polishing pad with our core cut. Very fast cutting compound. Let's come up to the roof. Okay, so this roof is kind of unique in that a lot of times the section between the actual roof and the pillar where the door rides, there's a piece of plastic, rubber, or vinyl trim. It'll be just as dried out as the rest of this because, again, this car is 8 years old. You better tape it off. A lot of times this doesn't have a sunroof. The sunroof will have a gasket. Now, in the old days, those gaskets were fuzzy. If you didn't tape them off and creamed over them and come back with a toothbrush to scrub them, you take all the fibers out and destroy the gasket. So that's another reason to tape it off if you're working on something with a fuzzy gasket. Nowadays, they're tended to just be a rubber material, but they're very spongy and open. And again, if you run your polisher over it, you're going to stain it. And because they're soft and spongy, if you try to clean them with the stiff brush, you'll tear that material up. So it's better to tape that stuff off, even if you run the tape onto the paint a little bit, than it is to cream it over, especially if you're doing this for money on someone else's car. Okay, so this pad has kind of gotten dry again since we've been doing a lot of other things. So I'm going to start out with 3 dime-size drops. And then here's how you tackle a roof. You want to start in the center and work your way out. And you also want to pick either this end or this end, but you don't start in the middle and then go this way, then come back here and go that way. You can do it, but it's just not a good best practice. So I'll go ahead and start in the front because it just really doesn't matter to me. Cord over shoulder, don't turn the tool on until it's in contact with the paint. The first thing I'm going to do is spread my product out just so I have a uniform layer of abrasive technology and lubrication. And then I'm going to start making my section passes. I think we dialed in 4 section passes, removed 95% of the swirls and scratches, which is what we were targeting for this abused daily driver moving forward. Okay, I'm on speed 6. And as you can see, there's actually a raised body line on the, there's a center panel, then there's 2 raised body lines. So I'm going to use the natural body lines to help me determine my section. So I'm going to come up to this, but I'm not going to go past it. I'll come up to this edge, and then it looks like I can probably get 2 sections here. They're kind of big, but we'll do that anyway. So I'll count my section passes out loud. Other than that, I'm not going to say a word. All right. Three. Okay, there's 4 solid textbook example of a section pass. I'm going to do one more. I'm going to bring my pressure up. So any micro marring left in the paint will be shallow, so it'll buff out easier in the next pass. Okay, so technically that was 5 passes, but the last one was just kind of a schmoo over the paint kind of thing. At this point, you know, depending on your style, you could leave that there, move on to the next section. I'm going to go ahead and wipe it off because I want to show a technique I use. So I'm wiping it off, but I'm kind of leaving some of the residue. I could reach and wipe it off, but I kind of want to leave that there because that shows me where I left off and I need to overlap into. Make sense? Okay, so that's what I do. Same thing here. I left a little residue right here, so I know I need to come back just a little bit past that for, remember the term? UMR, uniform material removal. Okay, so next spot, come over here. I always like to add my pea-size drops to a different place on the pad, which I just did right there, like that. And now I'm going to knock out this center section all the way up to this little lip. And again, I don't honestly know if this is panoplastic or painted. It actually looks like panoplastic. It'd be very soft. And this is a sharp pad, and this is some sharp abrasives. That's where you get into trouble, is the edges and the corners on these things. Okay, then here's another technique I didn't really cover. This is where people kind of dab this around, and there's nothing wrong with that, just to get your product spread out. But let me show a technique that most people don't show you to do this the right way. So now when you turn this on, as you're running it, as you're picking this up, just don't rub this edge into it. Keep the back portion of the pad in contact with the paint. Just kind of grab it and stab it, just like that. Then as you move forward, grab it, stab it, grab it, and stab it. So I'll show you it like this. The idea being just to trap that product within your pad of paint where you want it, not throwing it all over the place. Okay, so now let me do my standard 4-section passes. One more to just lighten my pressure, then we'll move towards this outside of the panel. Okay, there's 4-section passes. Okay, so again, you can buff out the whole half of the roof and wipe off. I'll go ahead and wipe off. But did you see how I kind of overlapped into the previous section? And that way you have a uniform defect removal. So at the end of the day, you have uniform appearance. Okay, so now what I have left on here to do is I need to do this section, the panel between the door, the A-pillar. I kind of already did some of the A-pillar. And then this goes all the way back to the trunk lid back here. And then I need to figure out what I'm going to do here. This is piano plastic and it is all cracked and crazed. So I'm not going to compound this. I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just do the secondary polishing step. So I'll light polish to that just to ensure I don't cause any damage. Okay, so at this point here, I might go ahead and clean my pad. So here's my little fat brush. I'm blocking this up back here so it doesn't spin. And I always like to get the edges really good too. And this pad is damp, but it's not soggy wet. Okay, now I'm going to work this panel that's actually closer to the outside. I started in the center working out. But let me talk about how often to change pads. I just showed how to clean a pad, but if you're trying to do show car work, you know, like high quality work, a good rule of thumb is for each body panel, have a dedicated clean pad ready to go. A two-door car like this has 9 panels. It's got the hood, the roof, the trunk lid, that's 3. Fender, door, fender, that's 3. Fender, door, fender, that's 3. So that's 9 panels. So imagine having anywhere from say 6 to 9 of your aggressive pad. In this case, it's the blueberry pad, which is a heavy polishing. But if you had a foam cutting pad, you'd have 6 to 9 foam cutting pads. And then after you finish a panel or an area, go ahead and set this aside. Usually what I'll do is I'll run it over to the slop sink and I'll kind of hand wash it really quickly and get it wet so it doesn't continue to dry and let it sit there. And I'll switch to a dry pad and keep working around the car. But for the heaviest step, you usually want a pad per panel or close to that. So a pad per panel would be 9 pads. So close to that would be like 6 pads. So if you want to just buy 6 foam cutting pads, there you go. Now, when you go to the next step, because you've done all the grunt work, it usually takes less pads, but you still want 3 or 4 polishing pads to do an entire car if you want to do high quality work. If you're just doing production work or budget details, use 1 or 2 pads per car, but you're going to wear your pads out faster and you're not going to be as effective with your defect removal and with your time. Okay, so I'll do this section and then I'll do this back section. Okay, I left a little film here. And also this has a little bit of a plane right here. So if you're watching, I kind of tipped my polish up and got that plane because I didn't get it when I did the center section. You could do it either way. Okay, back to core cut. Now I'm starting to get a pretty good film of spent residue on here. So I'll show you how to clean the pad again. Okay, so now I left a little residue here. So this is my section, but I'm going to overlap a little bit into that. That very last pass, I was actually getting quite a bit of pad stalling, and that's because the pad's getting wet. I said this earlier before. Clean, dry pads rotate and oscillate better than wet pads anytime you're using a free spinning random orbital polisher. I just kind of want to point that out because in the online world, I do see people that say, you know, that what I just said was wrong. You'd only need 1 or 2 pads to do the whole car, but most of these guys are using free spinning random orbital polishers, and then they wonder why it takes them so long. It's because they're not getting good pad oscillation or good pad rotation, both of them. I know some people always talk about pad rotation, like you don't need pad rotation to remove swirls and scratches, and I never talk about just pad rotation. I always say I want good pad rotation and good pad oscillation. I want both actions, not just one. I definitely don't want the pad just sitting there vibrating against the paint. That is not going to do anything. Okay, so this section is all done. Let me show you how at this point I would go ahead and pull this pad off. Can we walk over to the slop sink? Okay, so let me show you how I would do this. Now, if you don't have a slop sink, you know what you can do is you can just get a 5-gallon bucket, put like 4 gallons of water in it, and do this in a bucket and then let it soak somewhere. And for me, I'm going to throw it in my washing machine, but I'll show you how to use a pad washer. So here we go. Just same brush. Get it wet. Watch how clean this comes out. Those NSPs, man, they just peel off there a little bit of water. And if I did want to wash this in the washing machine, just doing this, now watch, I'm going to use my hand as a squeegee. I'm going to come down here like this, and I'm going to squeegee. So I'm pressing on that foam, and I'm using water and pressure to squish out any of the product that went into the foam. And then here's what I do. I mean, this is all the stuff I really do when I teach in the car. I use inertia and gravity to get almost all the water out there. This is from my last class, so this is kind of dirty up here with pads ready to go in the washing machine. Set it aside and let it dry. Maybe that's all you need to do. You can wash it further if you want to, but a lot of times if you do it like that, it's good enough. Okay, I need another pad. It's okay. I got a lot of pads. Okay, look at all the pads in there. I forgot to tell you the rotary polisher story. Don't let me forget that. Okay, back to my entry-level Harbor Freight Bauer 8mm free spinning random orbital polisher. Okay, so now I want to knock out this is called the A pillar. I'm not sure what they call this panel that runs across the top. This panel back here is called the Dutch panel. But because I'm going to be doing something that's about 2 to 3 inches wide, here's where I'm going to put my product for this. I'm just going to put a little circle of product right in the center because that's where most of the action is going to be. And then, because it's a long linear panel, just back and forth. And I've actually got two planes. I've got this plane and I've got this plane. So I need to spend a little time on both planes. Well, that was this horizontal plane. Now I'm going to go up on edge and just get this. It's about a 1/2 inch thin. Okay, this tool struggled to maintain pad rotation in some of the tighter areas here, but for the most part I got it out. Just remember, if you're using this type of tool, mark your pad, mark your backing plate, monitor pad rotation with your eyes, adjust how you're holding it, the amount of pressure, bump your speed up, whatever it takes to kind of power through the more difficult areas. Okay, same thing. I'm just going to put a few drops right here in the center. Now I'm going to knock out this right above the door. And I can do probably this whole thing in one fell swoop. Got a 1/2 inch plane right here. I got another little plane right here. These are going to be tough to get with this tool, but let's see if I can do it. For this, I'm going to do a little bit of what I call finger painting. So I'm just going to put some product where I can draw from it. And I'm just going to take and spread some across here. It's important to have that lubrication aspect to help you to maintain good pad oscillation and good pad rotation. Another trick I use is up here, I kind of did this section here, and I used this horizontal line between the windshield as a visual indicator. So I went to here, so I know when I do this section to go past that a little bit. Same thing here. Here's where the back glass starts. So there's a definition line between roof and glass, and I'm running the polisher just past that. Then I'll pick it up on the other side, run down this way, but overlap a little bit into that previous section. So let me see if I can knock out the more difficult part. So that 4 section passes on this thin panel. Go up top, repeat the same thing. 4. That section's done. I'm just going to come up here and grab that little pile I left there because I don't like to waste product. And now I need to come back here and kind of divide this section up. So you got the hips, you got the tops of the fender here, you got, this is called a cell panel here, and then I still have these thin planes that run up to the where the trunk lid opens and closes. So to tackle that, it'd be just the same basic kind of thing, but just for fun, let me show you, if you don't mind spending another 40 bucks over this one, what you can do with a gear-driven polisher. It's just so much faster. Okay, for this, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to do some finger painting. So grab my product. I'm going to put some on this pane. And if you watch what I'm doing, I grab some and I start out with my finger on edge. So it's all the way back by my nail almost. And then as I run this, I start spinning my finger forward. So I can get this whole section done with that little gob that I had. All kinds of little dumb techniques I've perfected over the years. Okay, gear driven. Here are the gears. It's not free spinning. And this is a dry pad bed. I've got plenty of product down here, so watch this. Two. This will be 3. 4. Now, if this was in really bad shape and I really wanted to get some dedicated cutting power on just that plane, then here's what I would do. I put a stripper product down. Everybody need to get some on the edges. Walk this in, real slowly. See, I've got product on the edges now. I'm going to come up here. Go up on edge. And then just real smoothly run that down that plane. And that is a lot of concentrated paint correction power in a small thin area. And notice I just buffed, like the widest, it's about what, 2 inches from here to there. Up here it's about 1 inch. So I just buffed out a 3-inch and a 2-inch panel using a 7-inch pad. So one of the things I practice and teach in my classes is when you switch over to a gear-driven orbital, instead of switching to a different tool with a different size backing plate with a different size pad, every time you come to a different panel so you can maintain pad rotation, just learn how to use the tool that's already in your hand. You'll speed things up, okay? And what else did I want to cover on that? Oh, the edge guard pads. Here's another reason I like these pads. We used to show another line of pads here in my classes, and they're good pads, but the edge guard, look at this. This is what Rich Umbrell did. See this cutout back here? What's going to happen is when I go up on edge is this pushes back, completely protects the backing plate and this plastic liner in here. And there's no way I can hurt anything. When you have a cylindrical pad and you go up on edge, it twists inward, and now all this sharp material is going to be close to the paint. So that's one of the reasons I really like the edge guard pads. Okay, now I still got, let's see, this is just one plane right here, so pretty easy. Okay, so that panel's done. Now I've actually got the sill panel to do. And here's a good example where the edge guard would come in handy besides a thin panel. When I come down to here, okay, there's a certain amount of my pad that's going to hit this horizontal plane. I'm on a vertical, going to running into a horizontal plane. And as I hit that, again, see how that curves back? That allows me to actually get in there and buff out that concave curve without pad stalling, without any danger to the process. So let me show you how to knock out that sill panel. And just real quickly, I've watched a lot of people on YouTube talk about gear-driven orbital polishers. Like they do a tool comparison, they show a whole bunch. And I'm always surprised by what they say. They say things like, well, I tried that tool, I didn't like it, pulled me all over the place. Okay, let me just share something with you. There's 2 words that start with the letter P. pulling and power. The reason it's pulling is it's got a lot of power. A free spinning tool ain't gonna pull, because instead of having power, it's got lack of power, and it'll just sit there and jiggle and oscillate and spin out, and it's real smooth on you. That's fine. If you want a smooth tool, get something like that. But if you want to knock things out fast, learn how to use a gear-driven orbital polisher. It'll save you a lot of time. Okay. Four. Okay, so now I don't got to worry about that. I just need to get this complicated area, and that's not that complicated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right presses, right presses. Okay, so now I've got this section, this section, this section. I got this big, fairly easy section to buff out here. And because I'm going to be running that edge into the horizontal, or the hips on this thing, I do want to put a little more lubrication on there. Actually, it works better to go this way. Sorry about that. I wanted to show the camera. Okay, so now I've got lubrication there. I got more than enough product on the pad. I will add at least 1 drop here. You always want something to work with. Okay, let's knock out. I'll do this all the way to where the trunk lid lines up, and then I'll tackle this as its own section. Move it over. Now I've got this whole sail panel done up to where the sail panel meets the trunk lid. I still got to get this area, and this is where I'd probably pump the trunk lid open, and that'll lift this spoiler out of the way so I can do this whole section. So excuse me for the break, but let me grab the keys and open the trunk. So simply by opening the trunk lid, I got the spoiler out of the way of this huge chunk of paint to make it faster and easier to buff out. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to this entry-level tool, 8mm free spinning random orbital polisher. I think you can all see why I like that one. You don't have to mess with any pad stalling. So I'm going to do this section, and then at this time I'd actually go to the other side and knock out the other side of the roof and then work my way around the car. But here we go. Right there, I get 0 pad rotation, 0 pad stalling. I'm on a high point, I'm in a concave curve, and that's just the downside of entry-level tools. You know, I showed you ways to overcome that. Anyway, while this is up, you could do things like hit the side of that, but that's kind of the big picture idea. Once you dial in your test spot, start at the roof, work your way down. Every car is kind of different. A lot of cars might not have the hips this has. So while I was already here, because I wanted to finish out this panel right here, I went ahead and just knocked out this. But at this point, now it's time to go to the other side and knock out the other side of the roof. Okay, so I'll try the back of the car, go in this direction, but when I get up to the door handles, I just want to share a little technique with you that helps me. This is a really cool tool Flex brought out. It's a flexible shaft. It attaches to their Flex Pixie. You do have to buy it separately. And then they've brought out a bunch of different types of foam pads that are just, they got the spring-loaded collar here. They just pop in here, and then they attach like that. And then there are different types of foam, like foam cutting, foam polishing. This orange is kind of foam finishing, and you can get different shapes. And sometimes I take a piece of like 80 grit and I carve mine down to be my own shape. But the thing I want to show you about this is basically a rotary polisher. And as you know, rotary polishers tend to sling stuff. So they're real handy for getting in here to get the fingernail scratches that kind of build up behind the handle. But my tip is do this before you do the polishing, because you're going to throw splatter for the most part everywhere. Then the way I would do this is, again, we're using core cut, is I would just take my finger and work this in, because if not, it's just going to throw it. You know, don't ask me how I know. And that's about the only time I really use this. I use it on louvers sometimes too. So then you want to take and turn your polisher on. I'm going to stick this in here first, lock it into place, and then basically just come in here and start polishing. And you usually got to attack it from 2 different angles. But that's the way you can get out those real annoying fingernail scratches. And then as you can see, I didn't throw a lot of splatter because I worked my product in my pad, but what I've seen a lot of people do is they turn it on and just throw splatter everywhere. And if you've already polished this and wiped it off, now you gotta wipe it again. So do the door handles first. Then grab your polisher, and if you look, you can see I've kind of switched back over to the gear driven. And the gear driven, especially on these vertical panels, is simply gonna be a lot faster. So I've knocked out this, so now just hit around the door handle. And when I want to come down here and get this, there's actually an indent in there, and there's another place where this thing's going to work out really good. Let me put a little product on there. Watch this. Just pick that product up. And I can get right in here and get that lip. Then of course, keep progressing down the top of the panel, work yourself down to the bottom, and then flip over and do the same thing to the other side of the car. That's how that rolls. Okay, as you're working down the door at some time, if it's got a pane and mirrors, you got to hit the pane and mirrors. And a free spinning polisher would actually tackle this pretty easily, but I do have the gear driven polisher in my hands. Anyway, that's how you tackle a mirror. And of course, keep progressing. The big thing about doing vertical sides is start at one end, work to the other end. And the only tip I really got is every car is different, but this is a concave curve here, runs all the way down the door. It's always going to be a lot faster with a gear driven orbital, or switching to a free spinning random orbital with a smaller pad. That would be my advice for that. Okay, now that I've kind of finished the top portions of all this, I still got to go down the bottom, and I call that butt time because I get on my butt. We don't have a lift here. And we don't have a lift here because I do a lot of classes. They just become more of a hassle. But while I have this pad on here and I'm kind of done with all the major body panels, let me show you what I would go ahead and do. We talked about topical glass polishing. And right now, I've got all these gaskets taped off, so now is the time to do it. And it's real simple. You just take whatever, for me, it's whatever I'm using for my first or second step for polishing paint. Same pad, same tool. Topical glass polishing. And if the water spots aren't baked on, they'll usually peel off pretty quick. But this is important because if it's your own car, of course, you want to keep the windows clean. A lot of times, the kind of stuff that builds up on these will not wash off, it will not wipe off, but it will polish off. And there are a lot of glass coatings in the market. Dr. Beasley makes some great glass coatings. And if you want to use a glass coating, the key thing about that is always, just like anything else, the prep work. You know, you need to get that glass down to pure base glass for that coating to make a proper bond. But when I detail cars, that's one of the things I do is I hit all the glass, but I make sure I tape it off first so I don't cream out those gaskets. Okay, so the next thing I want to do after all the first step is done, the first paint correction step, that's where we were using the blueberry pad and the core cut to remove 98% of all the swirls and scratches. So I want to go ahead and switch over to a softer pad. Now, in the test spot, I always like to test the least aggressive process. So that's the pad product tool and my technique. And I did dial in a process using the black soft foam finishing pad with NSP45. But off camera, I went ahead and just retested using a white foam polishing pad. You can't really say it has a lot more cut, but a little bit more cut. And I switched over to the NSP95. Got the same results, but I could go faster. And to tell you the truth, that's my style. I like to go as fast as I can while keeping my quality high. So the next step then is just to go ahead and retrace all my steps. So starting at the roof and then working your way down. But I want to share a technique with you for working lower panels. And this is important because when I'm teaching classes, I always see people doing it the wrong way. There's a right way and a wrong way. So the wrong way is when you're trying to polish something on a lower panel is to somehow bend over and polish. You know, that's the wrong way. Now, to do the middle portion of this car, say from the cell panel down to here, I went down the side of the car using a chair. But to get the lower points, that chair won't go down low enough. So here's what I always recommend. Invest the money and get some sort of seat cushion. This is called the knee and back cushion. This is just a generic cushion off of Amazon. And here's the technique. You always want to be looking straight across from the panel you're working on so you can see what you're doing. And that way you won't hurt your back. And a couple tools that can help you when you're doing this. I mean, I've got wall lights in our shop, but if you don't, this is where a good swirl finder light will help you to see what you're doing. And another little cool tool made by Scan Grip. This is the headlamp. It's a LED headlamp, and it will really do a good job of lighting up the finish so you can see what you're doing. Anyway, so then to finish this out, then I would just take and I've switched over to a white foam finishing pad, NSP95. Do the little dabby thing. And this is the areas you got to still get, is these lower areas here. I just kind of wanted to warm up my pad up there. And what you see me doing there is I've got a body line right here that goes up to another plane right here. So I just kind of wanted to tackle that section. Then I'm going to tackle this as a section because these are just all smaller sections. So you can't really do the thing like on the hood where you're doing a big cross section. You want to look at the panel, use this natural body lines, and then carve out, divide that panel into smaller chunks you can tackle, especially when anytime you're using a free spinning random orbital polisher. Okay, and so this is what I'm talking about. By getting myself down on the ground, I can look exactly across from running the polisher. So not only can I see what I'm doing and see my progress, but I'm not hurting my back, and I'm planted down here really well, so I'm stable. Because, you know, this is going to take a couple more hours to polish out the whole thing. And the last thing you want to do is, at the end of the day, is be sore. Besides that, just look at the natural panels and carve smaller sections at a time. And always remember when you're working with the free spinning polisher to mark your pads and hold the tool in a way that you're able to maintain good pad oscillation and good pad rotation. So an example of that would be, here's a thin plane right here, and then there's a different plane here. That makes this a concave curve. So the only way I can tackle this is to tackle this section as a section and this plane as a plane. So let's see if I can maintain good pad rotation. And, you know, these tools, in my opinion, are a little bit slower. It's a great way to get into polishing, but you got to really focus on maintaining the pad rotation. But if you do, you can actually get the whole car done no matter what the shape of the panel. So let me get up and I'm going to share some tips and techniques. I'll finish the rest of this out. But then I want to share some tips and techniques on how to get those intricate areas at the front of the car and also in the back of the car. The design of car body styles is so different among all the different brands. and there's just no way to really show you how to fix every single car, but this Mustang is a good example. It's got a lot of different intricate designs. Here's a fairly large flat panel. Here's a flat plane. Here's a plane. Then you start getting into the headlights. There's actually a section of paint under the headlights. So these areas can be very difficult to try to tackle if you only have one polisher. But if you only have one polisher, there's another way to tackle this. So just for example, this section right here, using this free spinning random orbital polisher, and also since it's been a few minutes since I used this, it's always a good idea as you're working around the car just to clean your pad on the fly. And again, I'm just kind of blocking this so it doesn't spin freely with my hand as I kind of scrub off any of the extra compound there. And of course, the same thing over here. Before you use it, just keep your pads clean. Okay, so back to the core cut. And then watch how I can get this in here and tackle most of this, but I can't probably get all of it. Anyway, you can kind of see that it'll tackle most of it. When I start shoving it up here to try to get this little section of paint up here, the pad just basically stalls out because now you got pressure on the edges of the pad. So as nice as these tools are for an entry-level tool, they are limited in what they can do. Let me show you conversely what I can do with the gear-driven tool. So we showed this earlier. And because it's gear-driven, there will be zero pad stalling. And what I just basically did is I took the head of this and I just pushed it all the way in here as far as I could get. And because it's gear driven, I was able to maintain good pad rotation and pretty much get all the way up into there and get this thing as good as it's gonna get. It's got a lot of, this whole front of this car, I think this car's been tracked. It's got a lot of damage, but that still looks 10,000 times better. Okay, let me show you another way to tackle this. Again, you can go back to your micro tools. This is a good way to get into tight areas. And for something like this, let's see, here is a tight area that I can probably only get a little ways in there, or I start running the backing plate actually into the headlight. So this is not going to be a good option. I can get the front parts of it, but I can only get in there so far. Okay. So when you get to areas like that, how do you correct them? You go old school, a little bit of elbow grease, work by hand. And to do that, you have two choices for the most part. You could use terry cloth. Terry cloth is actually quite scratchy. And I do use terry cloth for some things, but for base coat, clear coat paints on modern cars, this is a microfiber applicator pad. It's actually another one of those coating saver pads for applying coatings, but because it's soft microfiber, but it's also a fiber. The fiber is a form of abrasive, so it gives it more cut than a simple foam wax applicator pad, which has a uniform surface. So if I really want to get into those tight areas, here's what I would do. I would put some product right here on the end of my pad, and I'm actually going to work this in a little bit with my finger. Okay, so now I have two things there. I got abrasive technology, and I've got lubrication. And now I'm just going to come in here and just do this. And sometimes this is, unless you pull the headlight out, that's about the most you can do. But you can extrapolate this out to the car you're working on, and you can kind of figure out all the tight areas that you can't get your larger pads. And if you don't own the little cool micro tools, then here's a way you can tackle this at home in your garage. And of course, after you do the first step using the microfiber pad, and again, fibers are a form of abrasive. So just now I went and polished all that out using core cut, microfiber pad. Now, if I really want to go nuts and make it really look good, come back with the 95, change my applicator, less aggressive product, and then come in here and kind of schmoo it over. And the goal is, just in case the fibers left any kind of marring at all, switching over to something with the uniform surface texture, putting a little, as I like to say, passion behind the pad. You can work all that out and get an acceptable looking finish. And again, the only other way to really get into tight areas would be what? Disassemble the car. Nobody's going to do that. Anyway, that's how I would tackle the intricate areas. I would start by getting a gear-driven orbital polisher, so I didn't have to mess with trying to maintain pad rotation. But if this is all you have, then remember, all you got to do when you're working through these sections is just monitor how you're holding the tool to maintain pad rotation. And just real quickly, here's kind of a hard part. Notice I got all this taped off because there's pebble textured plastic trim everywhere. But let's see how much I can get in here.
Not very good. I got pad rotation right there.
But as soon as I start to get in here, I just lose pad rotation. So can it be done? Yeah, it's going to take you a long time. It'd be faster just to take something like this and watch this. And I've actually got all the way up into that little nook and cranny there, and two reasons. One, gear driven, but also remember, when I went to this tool, I got a larger pad size, and I got this really cool edge guard pad that keeps me safe as I kind of shove this polisher into that tight area. Then come back, switch to a white foam polishing pad, do the second step, and then this area would be ready to move on to the ceramic coating. But that's how I would tackle that. In the earlier part of this video, we explained how to use and why to use a handheld inspection light to really do a good job of evaluating the surface condition of the paint you're working on. I forgot to show you this other cool tool. This is called the detailometer. And what this does is it measures 5 different aspects of paint quality. It kind of just tells you what you can already see with your eyes, but it does it in an empirical way. So let's go ahead and we'll take a reading to start with here. And it's important to put on a flat surface and hold it very still. Okay, so I've got a DOI of 90.5. I've got a respected image quality of 71. I got a haze of 9. And in simple terms, you want these two numbers on the outside of this bottom row to be as high as they can, and you want that number in the middle, the haze, to be as low as it can. So let me go ahead and polish this out using the same process we've used over the rest of the car, and we'll come back in and see if we can move the needle a little bit, as they say. Okay, so here's some core cut. This is the Blueberry heavy polishing pad. Okay, so I made a series of section passes there. I think I counted 8. Someone on YouTube can correct me. Okay, that looks good, but let's go ahead and refine those results, then we'll take another reading. So back to the white foam polishing finishing pad. Little NSP 95. This pad's already broken in, so just a couple pea-sized drops there. Okay. Oh, much better. So I can tell with my eyes it looks good, but this is kind of a cool tool you could use kind of as a marketing aid. Okay, so there's our before numbers. Measuring. And we've had a bump up in both the DOI and the reflected image quality, and we've reduced the haze down to 0.04. Anyway, that's the detailometer. It's kind of a cool tool. You can show your customers, if you do this professionally, the before and after differences of what you can do when you do the paint correction and ceramic coating to their car. So after de-taping the car, pulling all the tape off, all this pebble textured plastic trim, and of course pulling the wheel maskers off, kind of what we're left here is this ugly faded trim. And this is common on a lot of cars. So let me show you the best way to fix this. Now, a lot of people look for like a one and done, set it and forget it. But to be honest, that stuff's never really going to work. And think about it this way. If this plastic trim everyone in this car didn't look good and last looking good for a long time from the factory, chances are nothing you buy late night TV is going to fix it permanently. So have some common sense. This is a product from my good friend Chris West. It's called Solution Finish. And what this is this carbon black. Shake this up well first. And it's milled to the size of a virus. So it's very tiny so it can get into the plastic. And what happens is plastic is exposed to UV rays, it starts to fade. And what this does is it just restores a deep, dark, black look like it came from the factory. In fact, from the factory, when they make this plastic, they put carbon black in it to make it black. And the way you do this is you just want to come in. I like to use some sort of cloth applicator so I can really kind of massage it in. You're trying to push it into the plastic. And of course, what's going to happen is you're going to get some on the paint. And some people freak out, but that's why I'm purposely getting some on the paint because it'll just wipe right off as long as you do it right away. Anyway, so you put this in really good, work it into all the faded plastic. It's important to wear gloves because it is kind of messy. And then after you've got it coated to where you're satisfied, then you want to bring another microfiber towel down here and just wipe off all the excess. Remember, this has this pebble textured plastic lip all the way around the side of the window. So this is what you do. So what I'm using here, this is a used microfiber towel. It's already got some stains, but it is clean and it is uncontaminated because I don't want to scratch the paint I just polished. But you just come back and gently wipe anything you got on the paint off, wipe the excess off the plastic, and then you're ready to go to the next step. Let me get that. Remember, I put some up here. And the next step is this is important to understand. Solution Finish is not a dressing. It's not a sealant. It's not a coating. It's a dye. It's black, carbon black, milled to the size of a virus that you can massage back into the plastic. So when you're done, you want to actually come back and put on a sealant. So there's step one. So it's always a two-step process. And then this is the Dr. Beasley's plastic sealant. It's for exterior plastic trim. And what it's going to do is it's going to seal over the plastic, try to lock in some of that dye, add some protection. And of course, it makes it look good too. So every time you do something, you're kind of adding some beauty to the car. But that's basically how you use this. You just want to massage in the Solution Finish and then come back and seal it with whatever your favorite sealant might be. And of course, after you've applied the sealant, come back with a microfiber towel and just wipe off any excess. Then you can move on to the next section. And this car has a lot of black plastic trim. It's called pebble textured black plastic trim. There. That looks so much better. At the beginning of the video, I showed you how I kind of clean pads with a brush under running water in my slop sink. If you don't have a slop sink, a lot of people are interested in what's called a pad washer. I've got two here. I got the Lake Country System 4000. I got the Grit Guard Universal Pad Washer. They both kind of work the same way. So let me just show you how to use this one. First of all, the key thing you got to understand is how much water to put in there. For the System 4000, it's 1.6 gallons. For this one here, it's got this Grit Guard insert. It's actually sitting on top of some spring spring-loaded water cups that pump water up into the pad. So what you want to do is you want to push this all the way down and then just add water until it just starts to crest over the top of the grit guard insert. So like a 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch of water. Okay, just like that. Okay. And you put the splash guard lid on, but first let me just show you how this works. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take your polisher, you're gonna put it in here, you're gonna pump it up and down. And when you pump it up and down, here's what happens. See how it squirts water? So it's going to squirt that up into the pad itself, and then it's going to be sliding against the grit guard insert. And this acts like a squeegee. It kind of squeegees off the gunk that the water's kind of loosening up. Now, grit guard and Lake Country both say any kind of tool will work. So I'll show you how to clean the pad using the tool I buffed out the majority of the car with. This is an entry-level polisher. Then I'll show you my favorite way to clean a pad using a rotary. So important, put the splash guard lid on. Try to keep yourself a little clean. Keep splatter from all over the place. This just kind of lifts up so you can open it and close it. Put your pad in there, close the lid. And what you're going to do is you're going to start out just by pumping a little bit and then turning it off. So after you pump it a few times, run it across the grit guard insert, lift it up, and let some of that inertia and centrifugal force sling out a bunch of that water. So that's fairly clean. I didn't pump it that much, but let me show you my favorite way to use a pad washer. And that's instead of using a random orbital polisher, get yourself a rotary. It could be corded or cordless, and this is the key. Get an extension on there. And here's why. Because a lot of times when you're pumping up and down, the body of the tool hits the lid. So by putting this extension on there, you can actually do a full pump without the body hitting the lid, and you get your pad really clean. Bring your RPM up, sling out some of that water. Boom, there you go, clean. So there's 2 pad washers, and let me just kind of talk real quickly. You know, there's a lot of people that teach using foam pads wet. I'm not one of them, and here's a real simple experiment you can do for yourself and prove what I'm saying to yourself. And that is, anytime you're using a free spinning random orbital polisher, once you dial in your process and you're buffing around the car, as that pad becomes wet with product, pay attention to how you start to lose pad rotation and pad oscillation. Then switch to a fresh dry pad and pay attention, and instantly you'll see pad rotation and pad oscillation pick back up again. And that's an easy way to show yourself that it's better to use a dry pad and switch often than try to clean a pad and take that wet pad and go back to work. And besides having the wet foam slow down pad rotation and pad oscillation, anytime you get foam wet, it becomes soft. So this is a heavy polishing pad, and by getting it wet, I just turned it into a polishing pad. So now I'd have to rely more on the abrasives to do the work, less on the pad. So prove it to yourself, do the little test I just shared with you. But I save pad washers for the end of the day, and switch to a clean dry pad as I work around the car. In the beginning of this video, we talked about coating thickness gauges. And I did a few measurements up here on the roof of the car and some of the other body panels. And every time I make one of these videos, people always say, hey, did you take after readings when you were done? And I usually say no, because really all I'm looking for is getting the paint corrected without going through the clear coat. So measuring to find out what the after results are might be solve that curiosity factor, you know, how much paint did you remove? But the only way it would really matter is if you took a diagram of the car, and then as you plotted out all the thicknesses, you wrote it down on the diagram, you know, 4.32 mils in the middle of the hood, 3.7 mils on the roof, and then came back, followed that process and took more measurements, put it on the paper, and then what are you going to do with it? Okay, so paint thickness gauge is exactly what I said it is for. I use it to make the go or no-go decision whether I'm going to get aggressive or stay very non-aggressive, or maybe not even work on the car at all. I'm going to measure to see if I got really thick paint or really thin paint, and that's going to tell me what products to use, what tool, what pad. That's the paint thickness gauge. Anyway, so we've kind of finished out the car. Look how much tape we had put on this car. You know, a lot of cars have this black plastic trim. Some cars only have a little bit, you know, but just make sure you got enough of the supplies you need for the car that you're working on before you get into it. The last thing you want to do is stain all that trim and have to come back and clean it up. So just a quick recap, I demonstrated how to dial in a test spot, doing multiple test spots on different sections of paint to make sure you are always testing on virgin paint until you dial in your process. And then pretty much I showed how to use this entry-level tool. It's called the Bauer 8mm free spinning random orbital polisher. I also did share with you other tools that have more power, like the Griot's Garage G9, which we showed over here going in and out the concave curve. And out of all the free spinning random orbital polishers I've used to date in my life, I'd say the G9 is the best at maintaining pad rotation for a free spinning random orbital polisher. Also showed you how you could also pick up for about $100 the Hercules gear driven polisher. We talked about my favorite pads, the edge guard, because of the way the pad's shaped. And then we just went through and used the different Dr. Beasley's NSP primers. The key thing to remember about that is instead of using traditional petroleum oils, mineral oils for a carrying agent, they use the nano gel. And that means as soon as I'm done wiping it off, I can go right to my ceramic coating. And that's kind of where we're at here. So the next thing I'm going to do, and that's going to be a different video, a different project, is I'm going to go ahead and ceramic coat this. I'm going to use the Dr. Beasley's Nanoresin 2.0. It creates a lot of water beading, makes washing faster and easier. I know the owner's going to love having his Mustang polished and coated. And then after that, I'll do the Dr. Color chip, fill in all those rock chips, and pretty much call the customer and tell him to come get his car. Anyway, that's kind of the process. I hope this helped you. Please leave your comments down below, whether they're good or negative. You know, if I did something right, let me know. If I did something wrong, of course, point that out as you always do. Besides that, all this stuff can be had up at drbeasleys.com. And remember, we teach car detailing classes right here in sunny Stuart, Florida. They are the most hands-on detailing classes on planet Earth. I always bring in really jacked up cars that are also really cool for you to train on. There's no chairs, there's no PowerPoint, there's virtually zero setting. Hope to see you at a future detailing class.